we find that in last week's parsha, Pinchas was the zealot who avenged Hashem's vengeance, and Hashem says openly, the reason why I did not consume the Klal Yisrael is because Pinchas had avenged my vengeance. So over there we had mentioned, the Orchestrated HaKodesh explains that the reason why we trace the pedigree of Pinchas back to Aaron, he says not like Rashi, he explains that after the Chet Egel, there were murmurings against Aaron. Why? Because the only reason why they blamed Aaron, why did we get involved in the Chet Egel? Because Aaron said we should give the gold. He built him his Be'ach, but his intention, of course, was to delay the Egel. So but in that interim period, Moshe would return, but the Erev Rav got involved. As it says in Chazal, none of them were Balei Kishuv, they were sorcerers. They brought about the Egel instantaneously. But they were blaming Aaron that the reason why the Luchas were broken, Luchas Shonas, was because Aaron. When Pinchas went and avenged the vengeance of Hashem, and Hashem says, if not for Pinchas, I would have destroyed you all. This quelled the murmurings against Aaron, because if not for Pinchas, there wouldn't be a Klal Yisrael. You're complaining, we lost the Luchas Rishonos because of what? Because of what Aaron had done. But you realize, if not for Aaron, there wouldn't be a Pinchas, because Pinchas is son of Elazar, and if you wouldn't have avenged the vengeance of your failing, there wouldn't be a Klal Yisrael. As a result of that, all the murmurings against Aaron came to an end. This is how the Orchestrated HaKodesh explained why the pedigree of Pinchas is traced to Aaron. So I'm saying this way. Rashi over there explains, initially when Pinchas saw what was happening, he goes to Moshe Rabbeinu and says to Moshe Rabbeinu, didn't you teach us that Boel Aramis, Kanum Pokimbo, that if a person cohabits with a non-Jewish woman publicly, and it's this level of Chil Hashem, that if you're a kanoi, if you're a zealot, you have a right to kill, you have an obligation to kill the person. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, yes, it's true, but I forgot the halacha. But because you remember the halacha, it's an indication that you're the one who should carry out the will of Hashem, not me. And Rashi cites Chazal, that the one who goes and declares, announces the proclamation, he should be the one to carry out the proclamation. But so Rashi says, so why was Pinchas? Why did he merit? To what? To do this act of zealotry, this Kiddush Hashem? Because when you bring merit to the meritorious. But again, why was Pinchas given the right? I mean, Moshe Rabbeinu should forfeit this right of Kiddush Hashem, so Pinchas should be meritorious. So evidently, there was a reason why Moshe Rabbeinu should be the one to forfeit the schus of Kiddush Hashem. What was the reason? Chazal don't even allude to it whatsoever. Now, so I was thinking like this. We find by the Chet Egel initially, Moshe Rabbeinu is a Shamayim, and Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Raid Kishich Hasamcho. Go down immediately because your people have become corrupted. So Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, Ami v'lo Amcha, why are they my people more than your people? So Kosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe Rabbeinu, the ones who initiated this were the Erev Rav. When the Erev Rav left Egypt, did you consult with me whether they should come or not? You had the ability to stop them from coming. You had veto power. So it was because of you the Erev Rav came, and they're the ones who initiated the Chet Egel. Therefore, it's Amcha v'lo Ami. Therefore, it's your people, not my people. This is the dialogue between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and what? And Moshe Rabbeinu. So we explained why did Moshe Rabbeinu do what he did. It wasn't considered a chet. It wasn't a chet what he did. That he didn't consult with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But nevertheless, so ultimately, why did the Egel take place? The whole story of the Egel took place because there was Erev Rav. As Chazal said, they initiated. And why would the Erev Rav? Because Moshe Rabbeinu had what? Had allowed them to come. Although he justified it. So it comes out, the whole story of Aaron. Why did Aaron get involved to try to delay the Egel, because the Erev Rav, because the Erev Rav had influenced Klal Yisrael, and they were drawn into this. So that Aaron had the murmurings against him was because of who? It was Moshe Rabbeinu. So because Moshe Rabbeinu was the cause of those murmurings, even though it wasn't considered a chet, as a result of that, Aaron had to be vindicated. So who's the one who vindicated him? His grandson. As the Archaim explains, because if not for Aaron, there wouldn't be a Pinchas. If not, there wouldn't be a Pinchas, there wouldn't be a Klal Yisrael. As a result of that, that's the reason why it's this album in halacha. The reason why the halacha was forgotten by Moshe Rabbeinu, so Pinchas, the grandson of Aaron, should be able to vindicate him, and that's why it was Megal Zchus Yidei Zakai, and it was Nisal Halacha from Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what he explained. V'daber Hashem Moshe Lemor. Nekom nikmas bnei Yisrael me'es ha-midyanim. Avenged the vengeance of bnei Yisrael from the Midyanim. Achat Yosef amecho. And then you're going to pass away. You're going to pass on. So what was the prerequisite to Moshe's death? The battle with Midyan. And after Midyan is destroyed, Moshe passes away. Chazal tell us that Pnei Moshe, Rashi cited in last week's parsha, Pnei Chamo, Pnei Yoshua, Pnei Levana. The face of Moshe was like the face of the sun, and Yeshua was the moon. The moon's only a reflection of the light of the sun. So if Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership was of one level, and he would have brought the Jews to another level, being the leadership, but yet it says, Moshe, we speak about the praiseworthiness of Moshe, that he didn't delay us an iota, although he understood that his death is contingent on the victory, he went to battle immediately to avenge the vengeance of what? Of Bnei Yisrael against Midyan. So this is Lagishroch Shel Moshe. Discuss this in a moment. From Midyan. So the obvious question, whatever happened to Moab? Right, Moab was involved. There was the Bnos Moab. But who initiated it? Who was the princess who actually cohabited with Zimri, which was the whole thing, which actually was the breach, the ultimate breach. It was Midyan. Cosby getting involved with Zimri was the ultimate, but of course it was no Moab. So Moab should have also been culpable. So Rashi himself over here cites Chazal. They had a right to come get involved because there was a fear aspect. Because we had a right to actually to plunder the Moabim, the Moabites. So therefore they were concerned for their safety. It says the only thing we're not going to do is to go to war with them, but to plunder them and to intimidate them and to overwhelm them were permitted. This Abra Riv Lo Lohem, but the Midianites, they got involved in a fight which was not their fight. Therefore, the level of culpability was greater to Midyan. That's the first shot in Rashi. Dover Acher, Shnei Predos, Tovo Sheishli Lotzimihem, because there were two small birds that are meant to descend from Moab. So if Moab would be destroyed, these two women would never come about. Who are these two special women? Rusa Movia, Benama Amonis. Rusa Movia, which is the grandmother of David HaMelech. If Moab would have been destroyed, there'd be no Rus. If there'd be no Rus, there'd be no David. The Gemara tells us in Brochos, if you remember, why was Rus named Rus? The Gemara cites a pasuk from Nach, from Novi, the same Shamos Boretz. You should put Shamos. The word Shamos means desolation. Atikra Shamos Elishemus. Shmo Kagorim. Should not be read Shamos, which means desolation, but Shemos, name. The name of a person indicates the destiny of that person. And where do we find this? Because Rus is called Rus. She's Rusa Movia. Rus, why was her name Rus? Because she's going to have a grandson that's going to be Merava Kodesh Baruch Hu. She will have a grandson that's going to say to Hashem with song and praise. So when the name Rus already lied that Haneshama had a destiny that who should descend from her? David HaMelech. He's this Mechaber of Tehillim, author of Tehillim. That's why the name's Rus. So if Moab would have been destroyed, there wouldn't be a Rus. If there would not be a Rus, it was only from her you're able to have David HaMelech coming about. So Hashem spared Moab because of what? Because of Rus HaMalviyah. And Nama Hamonis. Where do we find something similar like this? We find by the Doraf logo that the nations, they rebelled against HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So what did Hashem do? They rebelled against him. What he should have done, he should have destroyed them. But he just dispersed them. And each one was given another language that there was no communication. They couldn't communicate with one another. That's how the mutiny against Hashem was disrupted and came to an end. Because what initially initiated Safa Achas, they all spoke the same language. Of course, he gave each one different language. They couldn't communicate, and therefore they stopped the project. So Rashi over there cites Chazal. In truth, they deserve to be destroyed. Why didn't he destroy them? Why didn't he destroy them? So Rashi over there cites Chazal, because Shem was meant to descend from one of these 70 nations. And who's supposed to descend from Shem? Avram Avinu. So because Avram Avinu had to descend from Shem, therefore the nations couldn't be destroyed because they were all culpable. If they were all culpable, they'll have to be destroyed. But because Shem had to come from one of the nations, as a result of that, and Shem is Avram Avinu, therefore all 70 nations were spared because of what? Because of Klal Yisrael, because Avram is the founding patriarch of Klal Yisrael. It's interesting. The first Rashi in Bereshit says, why does the Torah begin with creation? Because if the nations should say, so the Maral explains what's the question. Because what is the Torah? Torah is a halacha, a book of halacha. It's called Torah because it teaches us how to live. It should have started with Achot Shizel Mechem Rosh Chadoshim. It should have started with the first mitzvah that was given to Klal Yisrael. What do we have to have the whole historical background? Hashem's the creator, and whatever is discussed in Sefer Bereshis. So Rashi says, because when the nations will come with a claim against Klal Yisrael, how did you have a right to take Eretz Canaan, the nation of the land of 7 nations, and annihilate them? How did you have a right? You people are thieves. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, we have the history of existence. Hashem gives and he takes, as he created the world, and he destroyed the world with the Dor HaMabul, the great flood, and with the Dor HaFloga, he dispersed them, and so on and so forth. It's Hashem's to give and Hashem's to take. Hashem took it from the Canaanim, from the nations of Canaan, he gave it to us. That's why the Torah begins with the history of creation and all the events that happened. Hashem gives and takes. It should be and give the world an understanding why we have a right to be in Eretz Yisrael, and we can't be accused of being interlopers. That's Chazal. But let's understand. After Dor HaFloga, the world should not exist. It should have been destroyed. Why wasn't it destroyed? Because there had to be a Shem who came from one of the 70 nations. And why did Shem have to come into existence? Because there had to be an Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was what? Is Klal Yisrael. So it comes out, just as was saying by Pinchas, the way the Or Chaim is learning, the reason why Pinchas was given the ability to avenge the vengeance of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to quell the murmurings against Aaron, that's why it was in Salman Halacha by Moshe Rabbeinu, identically, you can't have a claim against us. If not for us, there wouldn't be a world. You're claiming we're interlopers. If not for us, you wouldn't even exist. You understand? But nevertheless, we need the whole story of what? Of the give and the take. So part of the give and the take over there is what? Is Dor HaFloga. Dor HaFloga happened. Why weren't they destroyed? That's the question. Besides, Hashem's the creator, and he has the right to give and take. Why weren't they destroyed? You know why? Because they had to be an Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is Klal Yisrael. So you people, whatever your claim is, the reason why you exist is because we were, our destiny was to be in Eretz Yisrael. Because if you live outside Eretz Yisrael, it's like you have no God. So it comes out we had to have Eretz Yisrael because that's the location of the fulfillment of the Torah. Therefore, that would quell whatever claim you have against us. Similar to because they're two small birds that had to survive, that had come to existence. If Moab would be destroyed, those women who were meant to come into existence, which is the ultimate, therefore, you're what? That's the reason why Moab was spared for that reason. When it said something, the Gemara says, where do we know? We learn it from Bullock. Because since Bilam had said to him, build so many mizbachos, so many altars, and bring so many korbanos, maybe Hashem will allow me to curse them. But the fact is, he was a pagan. These korbanos were brought for what? Were brought to Hashem. So that the korbanos were brought to Hashem wasn't because he believed in Hashem, but because there was an ulterior motive. He's acknowledging Hashem because ultimately he has an objective to destroy the Jewish people. So from here we learned, the Gemara tells us, B'toch shelo lishmo b'lishmo. Rabbi says from Bullock, we see B'toch shelo b'lishmo. So it comes out, why did he merit to have Rus to be his granddaughter? Rus was a granddaughter of Bullock. In the schus that he built, the altars and brought the karbonos, which he was instructed by Bilam. That's B'toch shelo lishmo b'lishmo. This comes out, it's interesting. We had said that Bilam, he nearly succeeded twice. He's the one who gave the final solution, the shibud, Mitzrayim, enslavement of the Jews. Yisro borach. Yisro fled to appreciate the fleeing. What happened at the year 210, at the end of the 210 years? The Jews had fallen to a level of Emte Sharituma. We nearly went into the oblivion. The Jews had deteriorated to such a level, spiritually speaking. If we wouldn't have been taken out at that moment, there wouldn't have been a Jewish people. The whole purpose of existence wouldn't have happened. Hashem plucked us out the last moment. Bilam had foreseen what is the value of the shibud, enslaving the Jews. Ultimately, where is this going to take us? It's going to take us down to a point we're not going to exist any longer. Bilam read the script right. He read the script right, except only because there was special intervention, because our Kodesh Baruch Hu promised Avraham Avinu that there's going to be a Klal Yisrael, that after so many years we're going out. Therefore, we were plucked out of this quicksand and not totally sucked into the oblivion. But he read it right. So now we have another appreciation. When Yisro Borach, why was he Borach? Not because there was an injustice. Yisro himself understood ultimately what this is going to do. Yisro, he understood what was this going to do. The evil that existed in this was not just in enslaving an innocent people. He wants to annihilate them, that there should be a trace of their representation. And now we understand the culpability of Eov to a great degree. He was Shosak because he remained silent. Because he remained silent. See, he didn't speak up, see. But now they're not speaking up. It should have been a protest because it's the protest is protesting. Eov was a tzaddik. But understanding the travesty of what Bilam wants to do, how do you remain silent? Therefore, Eov was subject to Yisur Eov. Okay, now, the story of Benos Midyan, Benos Moab over here. What did Bilam say to Balak? Elokeim shelu sonezimo. The God of the Jews will not tolerate licentiousness. He read it right. If Pinchas wouldn't have intervened with his kanois, with his zealotry, the Jewish people would have come to an end. We would have been annihilated. Hashem's wrath wouldn't have tolerated. So Bilam twice read it right. The first time, why didn't we go into the oblivion? Hashem plucked us out. The second time, because Pinchas intervened. and didn't allow it to happen. But the fact is, if Pinchas wouldn't have intervened, who would have intervened? We said Moshe Rabbeinu. It was only Moshe Rabbeinu was the Salman Halacha, so Pinchas should be able to do it. But if Pinchas wouldn't have had to do it, Moshe Rabbeinu would have done it. But you understand, Bilam had no understanding of who Moshe Rabbeinu was, his dimension of person. Therefore, ultimately, the Jews wouldn't have gone to the oblivion. But in terms of the actual level of bring us down, Bilam understood exactly where the jugular vein was and what you have to cut to end the Jewish people. So Balak, because he built those mizbachos, so Bilam understood exactly how to bring about the demise of Klal Yisrael, that there should be no kedusha. So what was the outcome of this? That he wanted to curse us, so on and so forth. There was a Rus. Rus is David HaMelech. David HaMelech is Melech Mashiach. So the ultimate one who's going to bring an end to evil, he wanted to bring an end to kedusha. So due to his advising Bilam, Balak, he's going to have a granddaughter who's going to have a grandson, who ultimately is going to be the one to bring an end to all the evil in existence. And this is Voy Hashem Melech Koloretz. The Orchaim HaKodesh, in the beginning of Tazria, he cites a Zohar that when a person has a child, the neshama goes into the child at the time of conception. What neshama goes into that child? You have to have a schus that a special neshama. There are many neshamas, special souls or ordinary souls go into that child. You have to have special merit that a special soul should go into that child. So now, Rus had to come into existence. The Orchaim HaKodesh explains that the time, he says it's Parshas Kiseitze, at the time of the Chet of Adam Arishon, the Samach Mem, which is the most intense level of evil, that's the Yetzer Hara, he had captured a number of the most special souls. And only during certain times throughout history are they released. And that's the whole concept of Eshes Yifas Torah. You see a woman, even if she's ugly, but if there's an attraction, and who we talk about, it's a mechemes mitzvah. We're talking tzaddikim go to battle. This is tzaddikim. Have you ever heard of a Chofetz Chaim being attracted to a shiksa? The attraction is not the physical attraction. There's something about the woman. It's about it may be the spirituality. It's her neshama. She may be one of the women that have those special neshamos. He says so. There he says there were a number of special neshamos that were captured by the Samach Mem, Rusam Alviyah, Shmai Vavtalyon, who the Rabbeim of Hillel and Shammai. They were all Gerim, these people. Rabbi Kiva came from Gerim. All these souls were special souls. And only during certain times in history were they released. So initially, if Balak wouldn't have done what he had done, that neshama would have come to existence. It wouldn't have gone to Balak. But why did Balak merit to have that neshama descend from him? Because he had built mizbachos. Here he's this pagan. He commissions this person to destroy Klal Yisrael, and he's the one who does a mitzvah shlo lishmo. Therefore, the neshama would have come into existence with Balak, without Balak. But it had to come from him now because he did this special act. So the one who originally was through him, the Klal was meant to be destroyed, through him, evil will come to an end, because through her, we have David HaMelech, we have Mashiach ben David. Conscript from yourselves men to go to war, for battle. You al midjon, lo says nikmas Hashem b'midjon. Believe that for tomorrow. Hashem said nikmas Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu said nikmas Hashem. So Rashi over here says, Api sheshom shimusoso tluyi b'dover. Even though Moshe Rabbeinu had heard that his death is contingent on this victory, also b'simcha v'lo icher. He did it with joy and did not delay. And I told you that the Chazal says, Moshe. This is the praiseworthiness of Moshe. Although we knew that he would die and his death was dependent on this, he did it b'simcha. Now, That he did it immediately, we understand. It says he did it immediately, although he knew his death is dependent on this. But how does Rashi, how does Chazal know he did it b'simcha, he did it with joy? Maybe he did it. He understood. That's what Hashem wanted, therefore he did it. What's the simcha? What's the simcha? Now, we had said that initially, when we left Mitzrayim, what happened? Hashem rushed us, and we covered a distance in a short amount of time, because Hashem wanted to hurry us to get into Eretz Yisrael. The Jews read it wrong, and they said it's too much, and they started complaining. But where is the ultimate location where we're meant to be for the fulfillment of the Torah? Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Canaan. Moshe Rabbeinu understood the will of Hashem, the Ratzon Hashem is, as we said, the Gemara says, Kol ador b'chutz le'elo ke'eno eloka. You live outside Eretz Yisrael, it's like you have no God. The location, it's Eretz HaKadosh, because that's what the Shechin is. Hashem wants the Klal Yisrael to be in Eretz Yisrael. So anything which is for God's glory, to a greater God's glory, Moshe Rabbeinu is dedicated that, nachnemo. There's no self. When I die, I live for Hashem. So if I live for Hashem, I die for Hashem. As a result of that, Moshe Rabbeinu says, if my death is contingent on this, we do it immediately. But that's b'simcha, because his whole life was only for that. That's the reason why it's b'simcha. Because anything that Moshe Rabbeinu did for Klal Yisrael, whenever even by the Chet Egel or the Chet Merakim, they shouldn't be destroyed. It wasn't his love for Klal Yisrael. His love for Klal Yisrael was only because since Klal Yisrael is Hashem's glory, and that is the objective of creation. For Klal Yisrael, Reishis Bora B'Shul Yisroel Shnika Reishis. There's no Yisrael, there's no purpose in creation. So what's the will of Hashem? There should be a Klal Yisrael. So anything that motivated Moshe Rabbeinu was what? Was what the will of Hashem was. As a result of that, he did it b'simcha. There's no other way to understand it. Because everything Moshe Rabbeinu's life was nachnu mo, it was fully a negation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem is attest to the fact, who's the most humble man who ever walked the face of the earth? That's Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's how Chazal know he did it b'simcha, because there's nothing less than doing b'simcha than Moshe Rabbeinu. Since we explained all the various aspects of a person's life, what has relevance to him, how everything is provided for a purpose, whether for himself, for his family, for those around him, for his attire, for his residence, the world to advance the world existence, the world for the world to come itself. He fleshed out the 7 levels. So if you believe there's nothing in existence where Hashem doesn't intervene at every level, and you have trust, and therefore you should have trust in all these areas. And whatever's predestined, what's meant to be is going to be. Since I've explained, he says, with the prefaces that make possible the reliance of one who trusts in Hashem. You understand, person throws himself in the middle of the ocean. They say, as he's explained later, well, if Hashem wants me to live, I'm not going to die. There's no such thing. You throw yourself in the middle of the ocean, you're drowning. Hashem says you're meant to live if you live responsibly. But of course, if you go and you do something which is totally foolish and irresponsible, you're not going to live. Hashem predetermines your sustenance. Person chooses not to eat. Person chooses not to go to work. You understand? It's not happening. It's there that if you follow the protocol, it's going to happen. And of course, you have to understand, when you do follow the protocol, why does it happen? Because Hashem had predetermined that it's supposed to happen. But if a person walks into oncoming traffic to say, if Hashem wants me to live, I'm not going to die, that's nonsense. That's foolishness. Therefore, a person has a right to rely on just having that trust in Hashem regarding all 70 of these areas. Hashem yiftach kol boteach elokim v'azuloso echod echod. Therefore, a person should have faith in Hashem, trust every one of these areas that Hashem says, if it's meant to be, it's going to be. We'll see something later. He said something interesting. Every living creature, it's predetermined. You're going to have, Hashem will provide enough that you should live. If He wants you to live, He's going to provide that you should live. What level you think you may need more, that's your issue. But He will provide enough that you should be able to live. If you're meant to live, He will provide that you're meant to live. He provides the oxygen, the water, the food, the clothing, whatever it is that you should be able to live. What the context of it is it? Quality, not quality, with comfort, not comfort, that's predetermined. But to live, you're meant to live. The Omar, the fair shechet gorishem who binyonei guf odom b'buvod. Let's talk about what relates to the person himself, that you should be able to live and exist as a human being. And what is that? Himchayo, umoso. You live, you die. Teref mizono l'michyoso. The food that you need just to live. Umalbusho v'diroso. Your attire, your residence, briuso. What's going to make you remain healthy? V'cholyo umidosov. And the inborn characteristics that you have, the traits. V'ofnei hayosh bitachon elokim. Every one of these areas, what is considered proper reliance on this? That you're dedicated with full trust to the protocols of the one who decreed it. What Hashem wants, if you fully are reliant and you're dedicated to His will, to His program, it's going to happen. Whatever He decreed to be, you're going to have. And you should be fully have full trust in Him. And whatever it's meant to happen, how it's going to actually play out, whatever is most appropriate for that person in the physical world, in the spiritual world, and whatever is meant to be in his best interest. So a person, let's say, can't make ends meet, but it's survivable. Why is that? That's in his best interest. Tzadik v'tovlo, tzadik v'ralo, it's in their best interest. In terms of the objective of each one of their existence, it's better to be tzadik v'tovlo, tzadik v'ralo, whatever it may be. Shanhogas abori lo v'chulam shoveh. Every function, any creature that exists in existence, intelligible, non-intelligible, doesn't make a difference. It is in its setting because Hashem decreed that should be the setting. Just as there's no human being that could determine whether the person lives or dies. Person's meant to die. If he's meant to die, nobody could extend that person's life. Ubriuso, or the quality of health. Kain and biyodom teref mezonum sipuko. Just like when a person is meant to die, the whole world wants him to live longer. If he's meant to die, that person's dying. When a person is meant to come to bring a person to life, that person only can be brought to life if Hashem wants him to have life. Otherwise, the person is not living. Identically, came biyodom teref mezonum sipuko levusho. Nobody could provide sustenance, his needs, his attire, identically. Whatever your predicament is in life, whatever level, social, economic level you have, it's all determined by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's all part of the same program.